Hello Quantic Surfer, here's Charles on Virtual House Holistic Channel. I'm very glad to share this moment with Richard Moss today. Hello Richard.
Hi Charles, thank you. I'm glad to be with you too.
In the ever-unfolding field of consciousness and its constant, rather unpredictable interaction with us, which for most of us in the day-to-day life is constituting a sort of challenge, quite one of the hugest challenge we can meet on our road. In that context, one of the way you describe your work is that of a consciousness professor or consciousness teacher. What's the specific guidance it provides?
As a consciousness teacher, I suppose that I think that the ultimate opportunity for us as human beings is to recognize the freedom we have to choose the moral and spiritual compass, deepest value that we want to live our lives by and grow ourselves through a dedication to those kinds of values. And so my role as a teacher is both to invite people into the laboratory of their own being so that they can explore, ask questions, have experiences that provoke new ways of looking or invite new ways of seeing and recognizing themselves and choosing. And maybe open the door that's deep inside everyone to places inside of us where we really deeply know what is most important to us, what really matters. So I want to help people to learn how to teach themselves, to evolve themselves as human beings, in a certain sense to invent who they are by the choices they make in every moment of their lives. The choice of how to deal, for example, with their own beliefs and how the relationship to our beliefs can continue to evolve, sometimes completely setting us free from old beliefs and moving us in a new direction in terms of what we value and what we want to live our lives for. Or, for example, how do we choose to have a new relationship to the threatening feelings, deep states of confusion, anxiety, fear, worry that every human being experiences. But if we use the old ways of responding, which is wanting to get away from these feelings or wanting to feel better, we don't actually evolve ourselves. So are there creative new ways to engage the threatening parts of our own sense of life so that we move ourselves forward, I suppose, and become capable of greater love, greater intimacy, the things that we most deeply want as human beings. And out of that, also the ability to choose, or at least steer ourselves toward the kind of world we want for everyone.
Listening to you, I have this impression that we undertake an adventurous journey as a soul, and it reminds me of one of the book you've written where you mention a sort of compass for this journey to be properly made, sort of say, is this mandala of being, this. Can you explain to us a little bit more about this compass of yours?
Sure. Well, very simply stated, after years of working with people, I began to really ask the question, when we are experiencing ourselves in the fullest state of aliveness, what are we doing? And when we are experiencing ourselves filled with worry or fear or and being self-protective or aggressive, now what are we doing? What are we doing differently? So the mandala of being is a model, and it's a model that is a way of visually understanding every single moment of our lives, like this moment. There's a now, this now, always. Our bodies are always in the now. And then there is in this moment the now that is generated or aroused or created by where our thinking takes us. So a mandala is a Sanskrit word that means circle. Mandalas are symbolic representations of consciousness, or the journey of the soul, that are very pervasive in Eastern spiritual art. And most mandalas are circles strongly oriented toward the center with 4 basic directions. So if you could visualize a clock face, a circular clock face, the center is the present moment, now, the now moment awareness, the state of awareness of a surfer when they're completely in the flow of riding the surfboard. It's a moment where there is no thought, but just awareness, and where your perceptions and your sensations, your feelings, the inner environment and the outer environment all become unified, become a unified state. It's the goal of meditation. It's to learn to observe the mind to the point where suddenly we stop being the observer and become one with our experience of being. So the center of the mandala represents that. It represents present moment, now moment awareness, being in the now. And the quality of that, which is very awake in our bodies and at the same time relaxed. And the mind experiencing each sensation vividly, but at the same time spacious, not narrow, not focusing and getting smaller. And then the 4 basic directions of the mandala would be, as you looked at a clock, you could say that 9 o'clock are the stories you tell yourself about who you are. They're judgments of yourself. Okay, 3 o'clock would be the opposite side, and it would be all the judgments and stories you tell about other people and the situation, everything in life, really. So that's the continuum of subject-object consciousness, the subject and the object. And then the vertical axis between 6 and 12 o'clock on the clock represents the continuum of time. So at 6 o'clock, you could say that that's the past position. Those are the ways we remember the past, the stories you are telling yourself in this moment about a past experience, which rearouses the identity you had in the past. It rearouses the emotional state that those thoughts, the judgments of those memories, the interpretation of those memories create in you in the present moment. So you're not the surfer on a surfboard now. Now you're the person filled with maybe regret or blame or nostalgia. And at 12 o'clock, that's the mind moving into the future. It's that part of us that's constantly oriented on getting someplace. But also it's the part of us that can have a fantasy about the future that makes us very anxious or very worried, even terrified, or alternatively a fantasy about the future that makes us so hopeful or eager and expectant. In other words, these are 4 places: stories about ourselves, stories about others, stories about the past, stories about the future, that condition who we are right now emotionally and psychologically, and have no basis whatsoever in reality. They're purely created by thinking. And then right dead center, who you are, who I am, who everybody who's watching us now, who you are at the beginning of yourself in the present moment, which is a different state of consciousness entirely. And that's why I say to us, who we really are begins in this moment. So the mandala is like a compass. It says to you, now you're too far in the future. That's why you're getting so anxious. Or now you're too far in the past. That's why you're absorbed in resentment and guilt. Or now you're too far in judgments of other people, and that's why you're angry. Or now you're too absorbed in judgments of yourself, and that's why you think you're superior to other people and know better, and they should follow you and listen to you. And so it's really a way of understanding psychology and understanding the ego versus being right here, now, present moment.
It's like escaping the programming a bit, huh? Being in the zone is like being out of all sorts of programming, conditioning. It's a way to freedom, very, very nice way to freedom. On a personal level, what is striking me more than anything else, I think, is all those bunch of feelings that I don't want to deal with. I don't want them to exist at all, to start with. I want to erase them off the surface of my being. And suddenly you are professing a sort of kind and compassionate way to come in contact with them.
Well, I think what everybody needs to understand is And Einstein said it in a very interesting way. He said, if you keep doing the same things over and over again, repeating the same behaviors over and over again, and expect different results or better results or new results, you're crazy. Okay, so if there's a feeling that is deeply scary or threatening, and we have those kinds of feelings, feeling is a mode of consciousness distinct from thinking. There are emotions that are created by our thinking, but there are feelings of vulnerability, feelings of aloneness, feelings of powerlessness, feelings of ecstasy that come unbidden or unexpected, and flow through us or change in us, kind of like weather. The weather changes today. As you said when you arrived here, boy, here in Paris, right? This morning it was lovely, an hour later it was cold. The weather changes. 1 minute you feel wonderful, and it may or may not have anything to do with your thinking or how you respond to images, but another day you feel just so inexplicably vulnerable or anxious. So what is a creative new way every single time to engage these kinds of feelings, since they're totally normal? The old way is to say, I want them to go away. The old way is to say, how do I fix myself? The old way is to tell yourself a story, something's wrong with you. The old way is to name these feelings as negative. What would be a new way? So one way is to say, okay, is there a way of entering my body with no expectancy of feeling better and just be intimate with this feeling and see what it initiates in me? So this would be an alchemical path, an initiatic path, a shamanic path. You dive into the space without the expectancy of being fixed or repaired, and you let the alchemy of your relationship of witnessing and consciously being present to the feeling, with this feeling, lead to new openness, new vulnerability, to empathy, to compassion. You don't know where it's going to lead. It always leads somewhere, and you're never the victim. Or maybe you decide that you're going to give birth to some poetry from these feelings, or maybe you're going to dance from these feelings, or instead of becoming so self-involved and closed in around yourself, instead you're going to go and volunteer someplace and offer your support to others who are maybe suffering or in a hospice and they're at the end of their lives. And so you keep co-creating with these very dark feelings without the least idea whether you're going to be free of them, but what you can be assured of is that you will keep evolving. You will keep growing in consciousness. So my whole model has nothing to do with fixing broken people. It has to do with teaching people to invent themselves by starting exactly where they are, with exactly what they feel. And if they can recognize that I've been saying no to this feeling all my life, then to continue to say no to it is not going to lead to new consciousness. So say yes, which is what Jesus did when he had the teaching of, if a man hits you in the cheek, turn the other cheek, right? Or the mythology about St. Francis. He saw the leper, and instead of being repulsed, he kissed the leper and then recognized in the leper the Christ. These are all stories of people inventing a new relationship to these very deep fears. You can imagine in Europe or in the world when leprosy was all everywhere, disfiguring the wealthy or the poor, and nobody knew the cause, that you would, oh, they're cursed, there's evil spirits, it's terrible. And the fear, right? The fear I remember in the early 80s as the AIDS epidemic began to become understood. But sometimes there's a new relationship to fear, which is to not defend yourself, which is to open your heart, which is to let your heart get bigger and bigger. And you can imagine yourself looking at yourself from across the room, and the one part of you that's looking just loves you. It's such tenderness, knows the whole of your life, all the choices you've made, and it just wants to tell you, this too will pass. So do something with it that's new. Do something with it that's generous. Do something with it that's tender or gentle or creative or inventive. And in so doing, you invent yourself. And every human being who ever lived invented themselves. And everything we believe in now, every value we hold, every human achievement was invented by our ancestors. And they weren't all that much smarter than us in many cases, even the great ones. So we are here in this life to invent who we are and the world we want. And we do that one thought at a time, one feeling at a time, one relationship at a time, moment by moment.
Beautiful, creative way to live. Often throughout your work you are referring to the concept of a field. Can you explain a bit about that? What is there to feel about this field?
Well, some people have had the experience of, let's say, working with energy. Maybe they've heard of something like Reiki or therapeutic touch. And so they've learned to sense, let's say, energy. So that's a very basic experience of the field. We know historically things like laying on of hands. We know the shaman enters into a trance, and through the energy of the trance can transmit something to another person, which may change their psychological perspective, change their energy, change their health. So there is a field, and the field is created by the quality of presence that I bring to you, the purity of how I am in myself, the richness with which I am present to myself creates a field, because my awareness in relationship to my experience of myself is a polarity. If I have a deep connection to myself and I join you with a great deal of openness, that creates a field between us. There's always a field, but it can be much stronger and much healthier. So where Jesus said, where 2 or 3 or more are gathered, there he would be with them, he was talking about the field. Now most of us are we understand the world of cognitive reality, the world of thought. We understand to some extent the world of feeling and sensation, but very few of us recognize that through the quality of or the purity of the attention that we bring to each other, we create a field of relationship, a relational field. And the relational field is intelligent. It actually is what gives intelligence to us. It's not about consensus. It's about, I'm uniquely myself and I make a big space for you. You're uniquely yourself. You make a big space for me. In this field, suddenly we become informed by each other, but also lifted up into new insights, new capacities for understanding. We become more intelligent. So the field, there's always a field. The collective field today in the world is predominantly dominated by fear. The general direction is, I want to feel safe, I want to feel secure, the government should protect me, the healthcare system should protect me. And of course, this constant desire for security is actually what's led to the damage to the environment and is continuing us down a path of destruction, global warming, pollution of the air, pollution of the water, because we've been saying, how can I be safe? And how can I be safe is to have more of this, or have more of that, or take more from the environment in this way, or another way. All the different ways. The field is really presently more about fear than it is about love. And when the field becomes about love, that's when you transform your relationship to fear, because love doesn't say no fear. Love says make a big loving space for fear. All the forms of fear. Where fear says get rid of this, then you'll be safe. Get rid of this, then you'll be safe. Have this, then you'll be complete. Find him or her, the right person, then you'll be happy. That's all the world of fear. The world of love says start right now, make a space for what is. Start right now, make a space for what is. And as we become less driven by fear, the field becomes more a field that generates, creates intimacy and love between us and within us, and makes us more intelligent. We'll solve the problems of the world a heck of a lot faster in a field, a coherent field of mutual respect, than we ever will in a field where I'm testing to see, am I safe with you? Did you hear me the way? Did you listen to me so that I now know that you understand me? We're constantly listening through fear. Fear says, make sure he understands you. Make sure he agrees. Or if he disagrees, well, was he respectfully disagreeing, or I'm not safe with him? And so we're constantly creating a field of distrust, even in just how we listen to each other. And this is an unconscious kind of behavior. And in my work, I try to make the unconscious behaviors conscious, because then we can change them. Nobody can be made whole. You already are whole, but you can see the behaviors that make you smaller and change those behaviors. Nobody can be taught to live in the present moment. You can't get out of the present moment, but you can be taught how your mind takes you out of the present moment and what kind of psychology that creates. So the field is the energy or the relational quality that develops as people become more and more embodied, more and more present, less self-involved, less fearful. It becomes a cleaner field, a purer field, a higher vibrational field, and it literally is the source of deeper intelligence.
Listening to you is like discovering a whole new humanistic approach to come in contact or relationship with the depth of our own human psyche. It's like encompassing in all the richness of our feeling in an ever-loving embrace. Thank you very much for that, Richard.
You're very welcome.
Hope you make out the best of all this as usual, Quantic Surfers. Follow up by connecting to vajratholistic.com.